The Girl in the Ruins. Rain tapped gently against the wreckage of the old station, now forgotten at the edge of the Karnath belt. No one came here unless they were desperate. And Jake was running out of time. A former rescue pilot dishonorably discharged for disobeying a direct order. Jake spent his days scavenging wrecks and his nights with ghosts of the past. The job today was supposed to be simple: search the remains of a downed shuttle, pick up anything useful, and get out before the local raiders came sniffing. But when he kicked open the last sealed hatch, he didn't find spare parts. He found her, a girl, barely conscious, slumped against the cold metal floor. Her clothes shimmered with a strange energy, clearly not human. Her skin was a pale blue, glowing faintly under the emergency lights. And her eyes, when they fluttered open, were filled with a mix of fear and confusion. She spoke in broken English, only 2 words making sense. Please, help. Jake's breath caught. Helping her meant risk. Trouble. Maybe worse. He could walk away. No one would know. But something in her eyes kept him frozen, as if his soul recognized hers in that moment. Then the lights blinked red. A motion sensor tripped. Someone else was here. Raiders. They weren't just scavengers. They were hunters. And if they found the girl, they wouldn't ask questions. Not with tech like hers. Jake had to decide. Right now. His hand moved on instinct. He scooped the girl into his arms, her body limp and ice-cold. He whispered, "Hang on." The raiders were in the corridor now. Footsteps echoed. Shouts. One wrong move, and he was dead. They both were. He took a side vent, crawling with one arm while holding her close. Her breathing was shallow. He needed answers. Who was she? Why did she crash here? And why, as the darkness closed in around them, did he feel like the entire galaxy had just shifted? But the bigger question, why did it already feel like his fate was tied to hers? And what would happen if he failed to protect her? Hunted through the dark. Jake moved fast through the narrow air duct, each twist and turn echoing with the sound of metal groaning beneath his weight. He held the alien girl close, careful not to let her head hit the low ceiling. Her skin, still glowing faintly, pulsed like a heartbeat. She wasn't just injured. She was dying, and he had no idea how to save her. But one thing was clear. The men back there weren't going to offer help. They were going to kill her, or worse. The sound of boots clanging on the metal floor behind them grew louder. Jake could hear the raiders shouting to each other, splitting up. They were seasoned scavengers, ruthless, sharp-eyed. If they caught him, he'd be another nameless corpse stripped for gear and dumped in the void. He dropped down from a vent into a long-forgotten cargo bay, filled with collapsed crates and rusted tools. He found a shadowed corner, gently laid the girl down, and listened. Silence for now, but not for long. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused. Her lips moved, forming words in a language Jake didn't know. Her hand reached toward him, fingers trembling. Then she passed out again. "You better not die on me," Jake muttered, pulling off his jacket and placing it beneath her head. "Not after I dragged you through all that." He took a deep breath and checked his surroundings. The bay door was sealed. No way out that way. The only chance was the old maintenance tunnel on the other side. But that meant crossing open ground, and there were too many angles for the raiders to shoot from. Too many blind spots. He needed a distraction. He reached into his pack, pulling out a damaged fusion cell. Unstable. Enough charge to fry someone's retina, or blind a whole group if timed right. He rigged it with a spark wire and some chewing gum he'd kept for luck. A whole setup looked pathetic, but if it bought him 15 seconds, it might be enough. He moved silently, placing the cell behind a collapsed pillar, just outside the main hallway. Then he crept back, scooping the girl into his arms again. Her body felt lighter than before. Too light. Her breathing was shallow, barely a whisper in the air. When the voices came closer, Jake whispered, "Sorry about this," and hit the trigger. The fusion cell exploded in a flash of blinding blue light, followed by screaming and the sound of weapons discharging in panic. Jake sprinted across the bay, heart pounding, boots slamming into the floor. Blaster fire hit the walls behind him, sparks flying. He didn't look back. He crashed through the side tunnel door just as it sealed behind him. The sudden silence was eerie, broken only by the sound of his heavy breathing and the soft, irregular rasp of the girl in his arms. He pressed forward, deeper into the tunnels. After nearly 10 minutes of walking through rust and darkness, he reached his hideout, a tiny chamber hidden behind layers of scrap. No one knew it existed. It wasn't much, just an old technician's room with a flickering light and a makeshift bed, but it was safe. For now. Jake set the girl down carefully and activated the emergency medkit. The scanner flashed red, confused by her alien physiology. It didn't recognize her species. The only reading it gave was that her blood pressure was crashing fast. He bit his lip. "What the hell are you, girl?" He found a syringe with universal stims and hesitated. It wasn't designed for aliens. It could kill her or save her. He stared at her face, so peaceful now, despite everything. He made a choice. The needle slid in. Her body twitched. Then silence. Jake waited. Nothing. Then her eyes snapped open. This time, fully. She sat up with a gasp, hands clutching his arm. Her breathing steadied. Her gaze locked on his. For a moment, he saw something ancient in her eyes, something beyond words. She spoke softly. "You, human?" He nodded. "Yeah. Name's Jake. And you are?" Her voice was still weak, but clear. "Liara, daughter of the High Seat, House of Silmer." Jake blinked. The name meant nothing to him, but the way she said it made his gut twist. It wasn't just a name. It was a title. She wasn't just a girl. She was royalty. And he had just dragged galactic royalty through a sewer full of death. "Great," he whispered. "Just my luck." Liara's eyes narrowed. "You risked your life. Why?" He didn't have a good answer. Not one that made sense. Not even to himself. "You needed help," he said finally. "And I guess I'm tired of walking away." She looked at him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. It was faint, but real. It lit up her face in a way that made Jake feel like the galaxy just got a little less cold. But the moment was broken by the sound of a deep, echoing hum. A transmission. Not his. Liara's expression changed. "Fear." "They'd found me," she said. "Who?" Jake asked. She didn't answer, but her next words chilled him to the bone. "If they catch me, they will burn this world to ash." Secrets behind her eyes. Jake had heard plenty of strange things in his life. He'd fought on war-torn colonies, faced smugglers with ice in their veins, and crossed swords, figuratively and literally, with some of the meanest bastards in the Outer Rim. But nothing, not even the screaming skies of Delta 9, compared to the weight of the words Liara had just spoken. "If they catch me, they will burn this world to ash." The silence that followed was loud enough to crush his chest. Her voice wasn't dramatic or shaken. It was quiet. Absolute. Like someone who'd seen it happen before. Jake leaned forward slowly. "You want to explain that?" Liara looked away, eyes glinting in the half-light of the hideout's single flickering bulb. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, but her voice stayed calm. "I wasn't supposed to survive the crash. The shuttle was sabotage, I believe. Someone in my own court gave the order." "Your own court? So you're not just royalty. You've got enemies in high places." She gave a small nod. "My family holds one of the few seats on the Council of Worlds. My mother, the High Sovereign, trusted few. Maybe too few. And now, someone wants me gone. Permanently." Jake stared at her. He wanted to call it paranoia, but something told him she was telling the truth. And the transmission they'd just intercepted, it hadn't been a random broadcast. Someone was actively tracking her, hunting her. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a cleanup operation. Why would they destroy a whole planet? He asked, tone hard. Because I carry a secret, she said, almost a whisper, one they cannot allow to escape, something that could change everything. Not just for my people, but for yours. Jake ran a hand down his face. Okay, now you've got me nervous. She didn't smile. Instead, she reached toward the medkit scanner, still blinking red. She placed her palm over it. The device sputtered, hissed, then projected a faint hologram in the air above it. Fractured symbols, strange rotating objects, and something that looked almost like a living star map. Jake didn't recognize the symbols, but one part of the map caught his eye. A system marked in red. His system, Earth's system. What am I looking at? He asked. Evidence, she replied. My family discovered an ancient archive beneath the moons of Solaria. It holds knowledge of the first contact, long before your species believed it had ever touched the stars. Jake blinked. Wait, you're saying humans met aliens before? Before your written history began, she confirmed. But it was buried, hidden by those who feared what it meant. Why? Because the archive says something else too. She looked him in the eye. That humans were once the protectors of the galaxy, a race chosen not for power, but for their resilience, their compassion, their unpredictability. Jake laughed softly, shaking his head. You're telling me humans were some kind of ancient galactic guardians? Yes, she said without hesitation. And if the archive is correct, that time may come again. And they are afraid of that. Afraid of you. Jake stood up, pacing. It was too much, too fast, but the pieces were fitting together now. Lyra's crash, the raid, the way the killers had been tracking her, not just to silence her, but to erase this secret. If the council feared what she knew, they wouldn't stop. And if she was right, then the galaxy wasn't just in danger. It was already unraveling. Okay, he said after a long silence. So what do we do? Lyra looked up at him, eyes shining. We go to the archive. We find the truth. And we make sure the galaxy hears it. Great. Easy. Just sneak through a dozen sectors. Avoid bounty hunters, warlords, space pirates, and a galactic assassination team. No problem. To his surprise, Lyra smiled. A real one this time. You're not like other humans, are you? Nah, Jake said with a grin. I'm worse. Before either of them could say more, the room shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Jake grabbed his blaster and moved to the wall, peering through the cracked panel. Outside, in the distant corridor, lights glowed red. Something had found them. We have to move, Jake said. How did they find us so fast? Lyra asked. They probably didn't, Jake answered. But they knew where the shuttle went down. And if they know you survived, they'll keep sweeping. Eventually, they'd find this place. Lyra stood, still a little shaky, but stronger. She adjusted her cloak and stepped beside him. Then we run. Not just run, Jake muttered. We run with a plan. He activated a hidden panel in the wall and pulled out 2 old data chips and a cloaking transponder. Stolen tech. Illegal, unreliable, but sometimes good enough. We head to the old freight docks. I know a smuggler who owes me a favor. If we're lucky, he still has his ship. And if we're not lucky, Lyra asked. Then we improvise. Another explosion rocked the corridor. The sound of metal boots echoed closer. Jake reached for her hand. Let's go. She took it without hesitation. Together, they disappeared into the shadows. 2 fugitives running not just for survival, but to uncover a truth powerful enough to rewrite the stars. And in the darkness, a silent beacon began to pulse. The smuggler's debt. The freight docks smelled like rust and betrayal. Jake pressed his back to a rusted girder and peeked out at the landing bays below. Half the lights were out. The others flickered like dying stars. Everything about this place screamed forgotten, except for the ships, some old, some modified beyond recognition, all docked by people who didn't want to be found. Smugglers, mercenaries, deserters, drifters. This was the kind of place where names changed hourly, and loyalty was measured in credits or bullets, whichever lasted longer. He glanced at Lyra. She had pulled her hood low, keeping her glowing skin hidden. Even though she looked steadier now, there was a tension in her shoulders, a constant awareness of every sound, every movement. Jake understood it. They were both hunted now, no longer just survivors, but threats to something bigger. "He's in Bay 6, Jake whispered. "If he's still here." Lyra nodded without speaking. Since the moment they left the hideout, she had been quieter, her mind clearly racing with thoughts Jake couldn't begin to guess at. He didn't push. She'd talk when she was ready. They crossed the docking floor carefully, weaving between stacked cargo containers and flickering terminals. Jake kept his hand near his blaster. Twice, he saw figures watching them from the shadows. No one moved. No one asked questions. That was the beauty of a place like this. As long as you didn't cause trouble, you could be bleeding and dragging a body, and no one would blink. Bay 6 was guarded by a single motion sensor and a door that looked like it had been patched together, with parts from 4 different ships. Jake stepped up and pressed a code into the panel. It buzzed, spat sparks, then opened halfway before grinding to a stop. From inside, a voice shouted, "If that's you, Jake, I swear on the moons of Baltrax, I ain't loaning you another damn favor." Jake smiled. "Come on, Nico. You owe me. That was 6 years ago, and I never cashed it in." A moment of silence. Then, from the shadows of the ship, a figure emerged, tall, wiry, with half his face replaced by gleaming metal and a cigar that hadn't been lit in years, but stayed firmly in his mouth. Nico sighed. "This better not get me killed." "Too late for that," Jake said. "We're already being hunted." Nico groaned and stepped aside. "You always bring me the best guests." Lyra followed Jake into the ship. It was smaller than it looked from the outside, clearly cobbled together from salvaged pieces, but the engines purred softly, and the interior was clean enough to sleep without catching a disease. Nico led them to the cockpit, where screens flickered with readings from nearby systems. "So," Nico said, sitting in the pilot's chair, "who's the girl?" "Lyra," she answered before Jake could speak. "And I'm the reason he's going to need those engines running hot." Nico turned to Jake slowly. "You picked up a princess, didn't you?" "Not on purpose," Jake said. "You never do things on purpose. You just fall into the universe's worst problems like it's your job. You helping us or not." Nico stared at the two of them for a long moment. Then he sighed again. "I'll prep the ship, but I want to know what I'm getting into. Full truth." Lyra stepped forward. "We need to reach the Solarian vaults. I hold knowledge that was never meant to be lost. And those who destroyed my ship, they want it buried forever." Nico raised an eyebrow. "And why should I believe you?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she placed a small crystal device on the console. It glowed softly, then projected a short fragment of the archive, images of human explorers standing among alien stars, ancient scripts suggesting a time when humanity wasn't just part of the galaxy, but central to it. Nico leaned back slowly. "You're serious?" "Deadly," Jake said. "So why come to me?" "Because," Jake said, "you're the only person who still owes me and doesn't care what the galaxy thinks." Nico grumbled under his breath, then turned back to the console. "Fine. We lift in 10 minutes. After that, we burn quiet through the drift tunnels until we're off the grid." "What about the raiders?" Lyra asked. "They won't find us," Nico said, "unless they're already on board." The words hadn't even finished echoing when the lights flickered. Jake cursed. drew his weapon. "We're not alone." Nico dove for the engine room while Jake and Lara moved down the corridor, checking corners. Jake's instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. Too quiet. A figure dropped from the ceiling, black-cloaked and silent. Jake fired. Missed. The intruder kicked the weapon from his hand and moved like smoke toward Lara. But Lara wasn't helpless. She turned, lifted her palm, and a shockwave of blue energy surged from her skin, slamming the attacker into the wall. Jake stared. What the hell was that? Lara looked shaken. "I wasn't supposed to use it. But he would have killed you. You've got powers." "Not powers," she said quietly. "A gift. From the vault." The attacker groaned and collapsed. A marking on his armor caught Jake's eye. An insignia he hadn't seen in years. Not raiders. Not bounty hunters. This man was from the Crimson Circle. And that meant they weren't just being chased anymore. They were being hunted by the most dangerous syndicate in the galaxy. The Path of Lost Stars. The ship shuddered as it slipped into the drift tunnels, those ancient veins of folded space that ran like forgotten arteries between distant systems. No one really understood how they worked anymore, not even the engineers who claimed to maintain them. All Jake knew was that once you entered, no one could track you, if you survived. One miscalculation, one faulty stabilizer, and you were atomized between the folds of time. But for now, they were safe. Safer than anywhere else. Jake sat at the edge of the med bay, watching Lara sleep. Even now, in the soft glow of emergency lights, there was something otherworldly about her. Not just the way her skin shimmered faintly, or how her breathing fell into a strange, almost musical rhythm. It was something deeper, like she didn't belong to any one world, like she belonged to all of them. He hadn't slept in 2 days, but he couldn't close his eyes. Not after what she'd done to the assassin. Not after seeing her unleash something that didn't look like science or tech, but something older, purer. It wasn't the power that scared him. It was how naturally it had come to her. He turned when he heard Nico approach. The smuggler tossed a ration pack at Jake and leaned against the wall, chewing on that old unlit cigar. "She's different," Nico said. "Yeah," Jake replied. "She's not like anyone I've met." "You falling for her?" Jake shook his head. "Not like that." Nico raised an eyebrow. "But there's something. She's not just a passenger, Nico. She's a storm. And I think the galaxy's been holding its breath, waiting for her to wake up." Nico didn't argue. He rarely did when things got serious. He just nodded slowly. "You always find the trouble that matters, Jake." They fell into silence until Lara stirred. She sat up, eyes scanning the room with the quiet sharpness of someone always expecting a trap. When her gaze landed on Jake, it softened just a bit. "We made it," she said. "For now," Jake replied. "You gonna tell me what that was? What you did to him?" She looked down at her hands. The archive didn't just hold knowledge. It held memory, echoes, pieces of those who came before. They left something behind for those who would carry the truth forward. "And they chose you?" "No," she said softly. "They didn't choose me. I touched the vault when I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't ready. It changed me anyway." Jake leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not just a threat to the Council. I'm a threat to the balance they built, to the silence they've kept. They've hidden the truth of humans for centuries. And now someone like me walks with fragments of that truth burning inside her." Nico stepped in. "And where do you think this path leads?" Lara met his gaze. "To the vault itself. The source, if it still exists." Jake stood. "Then that's where we go." "There's one problem," Nico muttered. "The vault's location was wiped from most known maps 100 years ago. All we have are rumors and old navigation codes, most of which lead to empty space or black holes." Lara reached into her cloak and pulled out a shard of crystal, smaller than the one she used before, but glowing faintly in pulsing waves. She held it up. The light grew stronger as it spun slowly in her hand. "This will guide us," she said, "but only if we listen." The shard pulsed once, then projected a faint spiral of stars. The route wasn't straight. It twisted and curved like it was alive, passing through uncharted systems and dead zones. But there it was, near the edge of known space, a place marked only as the Scar. Nico whistled low. "You want to fly into the Scar? People say it's haunted." "People say a lot of things," Jake said, staring at the map. "Most of them don't matter." "This does," Lyra whispered. "If we fail, the truth dies with us." The ship trembled again. Jake felt it deep in his bones. Not from movement, but from something else. Like the universe had taken notice of them. Sometime later, as they floated through the soft glow of folded space, Jake found himself alone in the observation deck. He looked out through the reinforced window into the endless streams of light, rivers of stars flowing like ghost trails. The vastness always humbled him, reminded him how small he really was. He didn't hear Lyra enter until she stood beside him. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Too late," he replied. "I'm in it now." "But why?" she asked. "Why risk your life for someone you barely know?" He thought about it. Really thought about it. The wars. The regrets. The nights he'd spent wondering if he'd ever do something that mattered. "Because maybe," he said, "this is the first time in my life that the choice actually feels right." Lyra didn't speak, but her hand brushed lightly against his, just for a moment. Then the ship's alarm blared. Jake spun toward the console. "What is it?" Nico's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got company. Someone's following us through the drift. That's not supposed to be possible." Jake swore under his breath. "How many?" "One ship. Fast. Armed. And it's gaining." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "It's them." Jake looked at her. The crimson circle. "No," she said. "Worse." He didn't think that was possible. But the way her face had gone pale told him everything. Whoever was coming, they weren't here to capture her. They were here to end everything. Ashes in the void. The ship rocked as plasma fire lit up the stars behind them. Jake barely stayed on his feet, gripping the edge of the cockpit as the alarm screamed. Outside the window, the drift tunnel's peaceful flow of light had erupted into chaos, spiraling around them as the pursuing ship tore through the folds like a blade through silk. Nico cursed, yanking the flight controls hard to the left. This ship wasn't built for dogfights. "Jake, just keep us flying," Jake shouted. "Buy me 2 minutes. You've got 60 seconds or less, unless you've got a miracle stuffed in your jacket." Jake turned, sprinting through the corridor toward the cargo hold where Lyra was already strapping herself into the emergency seat. The glow of her crystal shard was pulsing faster now, like it could sense what was coming. She looked up at him, calm but fierce. "They're not going to let us reach the vault," she said. "No," Jake replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "They're going to try to bury us in space. Then we don't give them the chance." She opened her palm, revealing the shard. The glow surged outward, and for a moment the ship's systems flickered, as if the crystal was calling out, resonating with something just beyond their reach. Jake felt the hair on his arm stand. The air thickened. Everything vibrated with silent tension. "What is it doing?" he asked. "Responding," Lyra whispered, "to a signal, a presence in the fold." Another blast shook the ship. Part of the starboard wing peeled away. Warning lights turned red. The enemy ship was right behind them now, its shadow stretching across the deck like death reaching out. But then, something changed. The shard pulsed again, and the space outside warped violently. A rip opened in the drift. Not a natural one. Not like the tunnels they had traveled through. This was ancient, jagged, unnatural. Like someone had torn the universe open long ago and never closed it. Nico's voice shouted over the intercom, panicked. What the hell did she just do? "Get us inside," Jake yelled. "Are you insane? We don't even know where it leads. We know where the other way leads. A pause. Then Nico cursed louder and slammed the thrusters. The ship dove into the rift just as another plasma shot skimmed their rear thruster, sending them spiraling into the unknown. Everything turned white. Time stretched, cracked, blood. When Jake could see again, they were no longer in the drift. The stars here were wrong. Twisted, distant, and directly ahead, in orbit around a dying red dwarf, floated a structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't a space station. It was something more. Organic. Massive. Shaped like a spiral shell wrapped in crystal veins. Old. Impossibly old. "That's it," Lyra said, her voice soft, awestruck. "The vault." Jake exhaled. "You really weren't lying." "They say the first protectors built it," she said. "A place where memory lies." The ship limped toward the vault. Damage. Sparking. Nearly out of fuel. But it moved, as if something was pulling it forward. Behind them, the enemy ship emerged from the rift. They hadn't shaken them. They'd only delayed them. "We're out of time," Jake muttered, standing and checking his blaster. It was cracked but functional. He handed a small sidearm to Lara. "You ever use one of these?" "No," she said, gripping it tightly. "But I'll learn fast." Nico kept the ship steady as they docked. Jake and Lara jumped down onto the platform outside the vault. It was quiet. Too quiet. No welcome, no defense systems, just the endless hum of the structure vibrating in their bones. "How do we get in?" Jake asked. "We don't," Lyra said. "It lets us in." She stepped forward, holding the shard up. The vault shimmered. A doorway appeared in the air, formed from light and sound. It opened like a flower blooming after a long winter. They ran inside. The interior was nothing like the outside. It wasn't metal or stone. It was memory. Holograms floated in the air, scenes from distant pasts, battles, discoveries, peace treaties, and humans. Everywhere, not as conquerors, but as healers, diplomats, protectors. Jake stared, stunned. "It's all true." "And more," Lyra said. "The galaxy was unified once, by your kind." He turned to her, breath-catching. "Why did they hide it?" "Because they feared you would rise again." Behind them, the vault shook. The enemy ship had docked. They were here. Jake raised his blaster. "How many?" "3, Lyra said, eyes closed. "But they're not just soldiers." The first figure stepped through the light, cloaked in black and silver, face hidden behind a mask with a crimson symbol. Not the Crimson Circle, but something older. Lyra's voice trembled. "They're shades." Jake frowned. "What?" "Agents of silence, sworn to erase truth." Jake didn't hesitate. He fired. The bolt passed through the first shade like smoke. "Well," he muttered, "that's not good." The shades advanced. Lara stepped forward, the shard glowing like a star in her hand. "You want silence," she said, voice rising. "Then listen." She pressed the shard to her chest. Light exploded from her body. Not heat, not fire, something pure, memory, truth. The vault responded. Walls lit up. The air shimmered. The shades screamed, not in pain, but in rage. They began to dissolve, as if the truth itself was poison. Jake grabbed Lyra's hand as the vault began to collapse. "What did you do?" "I finished what they started," she whispered. "I set the truth free." The vault began to tear apart, sending a final signal across the stars. And somewhere, across dozens of systems, something ancient began to stir. Echoes of the first light. The vault was gone. Consumed in a burst of pure memory, dissolved into light that spread across the dark like a ripple in still water. Jake floated in the wreckage of it all, his body aching, his mind dazed, his ears ringing with silence. The kind of silence that follows something massive, something final. Stars blinked overhead, indifferent as ever, while debris drifted slowly in the weightless void around him. He coughed, blinked through the cracked visor of his helmet, and reached out with a shaking arm. Liara. His voice was hoarse, nearly swallowed by the static inside his suit. He saw her, hovering nearby, curled in a ball of soft white light. She didn't move. Jake's heart twisted. He activated the emergency boosters on his suit, inching toward her, praying that her glow wasn't just some dying echo of the shard's last pulse. "Come on," he whispered, eyes locked on her pale blue form. "Don't do this." He reached her. His hand touched hers. The moment their skin met, the glow faded, and her eyes opened. Barely, but enough. She was alive. Jake pulled her close, tears stinging behind his eyes, though they wouldn't fall in zero gravity. "You crazy, brilliant, impossible girl." Liara's voice came faint through the calm. "We did it, didn't we?" "I think so," Jake said. "Whatever you released, it's everywhere." And it was. Across the galaxy, ships had received the signal, a wave of memory, history, knowledge. Visions of a forgotten past, of humans standing beside alien brothers and sisters, shaping peace in a time long buried. Archives long hidden began to reactivate. Ancient outposts blinked awake. Statues, tablets, and ruins started glowing with the same light they had seen inside the vault. And more importantly, people began to question. On the Council of Worlds, arguments erupted as new evidence flooded the secure networks. Historians, activists, soldiers, all now faced a truth that shattered centuries of controlled narrative. The lie had cracked. But the truth, it was alive. Jake's calm buzzed again. Nico's voice, garbled but alive. "You two still breathing out there?" "Barely," Jake said, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You pick up our signal." "Your beacon lit up the whole sector like a second sun. I got eyes on you. Pulling you in now." Minutes later, Jake and Liara were back aboard the patched-up freighter, lying side by side in the infirmary. Nico hovered nearby, shaking his head. "I don't know what kind of cosmic force you unleashed, but you just turned the galaxy upside down." "Yeah," Jake muttered. "Felt like it." Liara sat up slowly, her expression thoughtful. "They'll come for us. Those who still fear what we've uncovered. This is only the beginning." Nico snorted. "Great. More enemies. Just what we needed." But Jake didn't look worried. For the first time in years, he felt purpose burn in his veins like fuel. Not revenge, not orders, not guilt, but something real. "Then we don't stop," he said. "We follow the signal. We protect the truth." Liara nodded. "We finish what the first protectors started." And so they did. In the weeks that followed, their names spread in hushed whispers, first among fringe worlds, then across inner systems, not as criminals or fugitives, but as bearers of light, guardians of the past, protectors of what had been hidden. Some called Liara a saint. Others called her dangerous. Some called Jake a madman. Others called him a hero. They didn't care what they were called. They just kept moving. Planet to planet, vault to vault, each place unlocking more pieces of the old network. Each stop drawing more attention. Some of it friendly, some of it not. But the movement grew, and soon they weren't alone. Scientists, rebels, old soldiers, even former agents of the Council began reaching out. The lie was dying. Truth was catching fire. And everywhere they went, the same question followed. Why did humanity ever stop? Why did the galaxy forget? One day, as their ship hovered in orbit above a ruined temple on a forest world, Liara stood beside Jake and said, "Do you think they'll believe in us? In this?" Jake looked out at the trees swaying far below, at the children playing beneath the golden sun. "I don't care if they believe in us," he said. "I care if they believe in what we're fighting for." She smiled. "I do." "Then that's enough." The sky above them flickered. Another signal from the next vault waiting to be found. A new path. Another truth ready to be shared. Jake took Lyra's hand, and together they turned toward it. Not as a soldier and a princess, but as something new. The last protectors of the first light.